Ole Miss is in a free fall right now after a loss to the Missouri Tigers. There's not much left to say. This is as bad as it gets.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good evening and welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis, and we are going to talk about Ole Miss's 83-75 loss to Missouri. We're going to talk about what that means and what I mean when I say this Ole Miss basketball team is in a free fall. They are in purely desperation mode in the moment, and we're going to tell you about that in just a second. My gut reaction from this game is that nobody on Ole Miss's team played particularly well. Now, you might have had a couple of players that didn't play poorly, but nobody played well. And you had a couple of guys that you count on make inexplicable mistakes at exactly the wrong time to win a road game. And listen, let's just be real about something here for a second. Losing a road game at Missouri is not something to be ashamed of. This is a ranked team. They won 15 in a row, beat Kansas on that floor earlier in the season. It is difficult to beat this Missouri team there. This is why that Texas A&M debacle was so important. We talked about the need to go 1-1 every single week, and now you put yourself in a really bad position by losing that game to Texas A&M, especially the way you did. You absolutely got worked at the end of that ball game. So you had to go up to Missouri and you had to get a W. And the way you get a W at Missouri is A, you have to play really well and you have to make sure that Caleb Grill doesn't go off or somebody else doesn't go off for a big night. Well, tonight, two of them did, which made it increasingly difficult for Ole Miss to get a victory. Listen, Ole Miss has lost 3 in a row. We talked about the Mississippi State game going into the Ole Miss game and how they were desperate for a win because the way they had a loss to Auburn and Kentucky, and they were trying to avoid a 3-game losing streak that could become a 4-game losing streak. Does everybody remember when I brought that up? Ole Miss was in the same position tonight, and they did not come out on top because they had a road game instead of playing at home. Ole Miss plays Texas at home on Wednesday. Then you get Auburn, and then you get Kentucky. It is the 3-game home stretch that is going to define Ole Miss's basketball season. 3 games that are going to be at the very end of January into February. These 3 games are going to define Ole Miss's basketball season. We've seen the highs of this team going over to Alabama, winning the first 4 games in conference play. We've seen the highs of this team, and now we are seeing the lows of this team. And it is going to be imperative by Chris Beard and the Ole Miss basketball coaching staff to figure out how to get Ole Miss out of this tailspin before it gets out of control. Because if Ole Miss were to lose Wednesday to Texas, you are officially in danger zone land, to where you might not make the NCAA tournament. Everybody assumed that Ole Miss would. You might not make the NCAA tournament if you lose the next 3 ball games. Ole Miss likely needs to go 2-1 to feel really good about the next 3 games. Ole Miss has put themselves in a hole after the loss to Texas A&M. That the way that game was lost is the difference between tonight being 5-2 and tonight being 4-3 and staring directly at danger. Now, there's other programs in the SEC that's dealing with danger right now, one of which being Kentucky. Kentucky's got the little desperate program thing going for themselves right now as well. So I understand the trepidation. I know that some people are going to say, hey, this Missouri game's a problem. The Missouri game in itself is not a problem. It's the ability to stem this, to stop this bleeding is going to be the imperative thing. The loss to Texas A&M is 10 times worse than any other loss Ole Miss has had. The loss to Texas A&M is a season direction type loss. That game felt huge. The numbers and the fan base, if you want to look at this Ole Miss fan base right now, after that Texas A&M loss, views went down by 70%. Think about that. That's how deflated they were going into this ball game. And Michael Katz, who was on the show this morning, said that Ole Miss fans just needed to feel good about themselves. And Ole Miss basketball needed to feel good about themselves for a change. They're just in a rut right now. They've played good teams. There's a lot of good basketball teams in the Southeastern Conference. And I talked about even after the Alabama game that losses were coming to this Ole Miss team. It's just the way this is going to work. We've seen the peak of what this team could be. Now we are seeing the valley, the floor of what this team could be. Ole Miss has to get back in the middle. It is the race to 8 again. We are right back into the race to 8. Ole Miss needs 8 wins to get to the NCAA tournament. We're not going to worry about 10 wins. We're not going to worry about 12 wins. It is a race to 8. We shouldn't have come off of that number because we knew how difficult the Southeastern Conference was. And listen, hey, I want to give Missouri a lot of credit because they did not win a conference game a year ago. But thanks to the transfer portal, they are the poster child for the transfer portal, bringing in players. And now they're a good team. They've got to win at Florida. And not many teams have beaten Florida this year. Missouri got them done. Caleb Grill, dude, I've heard him described, I think it was on X. I heard him described as a 30-year-old playing a high school student in a basketball movie. Or a 30-year-old playing a basketball player in a high school movie or something like that. And it was just perfect. It's just a perfect way to describe what was going on. But they're a good basketball team. They play really hard, and they play really well, and they play veteran basketball. They play smart basketball. And whenever he's open, if you give him a space, there's major Marshall Henderson vibes with that basketball player. And if you have to, to beat Missouri, you've got to hold him under probably 8 points for the game. Because if he gets going, they know how to find him. He is really good at getting open. And if he's making shots, they are a difficult team to beat. They just are. They're going to beat a lot of teams this year. So, like I said, at the root, the problem is not losing to Missouri. The problem this week was the loss to Texas A&M, necessitating a win at Missouri. Not doing those, you've lost 3 in a row with Texas, Auburn, and Kentucky up next. So that's the real problem. Anyway, when we come back, we will go over the box score a little bit and talk about what's going on and which players Ole Miss had, I guess, play okay in the Missouri game. Stick around. All right, today's show is brought to you by Game Time, America's best secondary market ticket place that I can think of. You know, attending NFL playoff games is an experience unlike any other. The energy, the excitement, and the camaraderie with other fans is absolutely unmatched. I'll never forget the thrill of watching my favorite team clinch a playoff victory live. It's a moment I'll cherish forever. This year, Game Time makes it even easier to create those unforgettable memories with their new feature, Game Time Picks. It cuts through the clutter and shows you the best deals on great seats so you can focus on what really matters, being there. I recently used Game Time Picks to snag tickets for an upcoming playoff game, and it was such a breeze. I found a super deal that gave me an amazing value for incredible seats. One of my favorite features is being able to preview the seat view before buying. It is so helpful. Plus, with their all-in pricing, there was no surprises at checkout. And with Game Time's guarantee, that gave me total peace of mind knowing that my tickets were secured and going to be delivered on time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the actual box score of the game. And again, Missouri won 83-75. At the end of the game, they pulled away. Ole Miss, I think, got to within 2 or 3 points with about 6 minutes to go. It looked like it was going to be a game, and then turnovers happened. Bad plays happened. The big problem of this week is turnovers and bad plays happening at the worst possible moment. It's like the lack of timely hitting or the untimely error is what is happening to Ole Miss basketball at the moment. Ole Miss shot the ball fairly well, 48.3%. Missouri at 44.9. Three-point range, not so much. Ole Miss 6 of 20, including a bad air ball by Sean Padula. Missouri was 11 of 25. Caleb Grill was money from there. Ole Miss had 13 turnovers. Missouri 16. Ole Miss had 4 turnovers, I think, on inbounds. That's a problem. The Ole Miss in the inbounds and this game was an issue. Rebounding-wise, Missouri had 39, Ole Miss 28. They did kind of get second-chance opportunities. Like I said, for Ole Miss to win the rebounding battle, you're not going to beat them. But Ole Miss winning the rebound battle is a problem. And Ole Miss had 24 fouls to 19 for the Missouri Tigers. Ole Miss was led by Malik Dia, who was 6 of 13 shooting, 5 of 6 from the line, 17 points. Jamin Brakefield had 14. Sean Padula had 15. Matthew Morell had 12. That's all double figures. You should be excited by that amount, but nobody on this team particularly played well. Dia had 8 rebounds. Brakefield had 2. Padula had 2. Morell had 6. Jalen Murray 2. Devin Barnes had 4 rebounds. 3 points overall. Mikael Brown-Jones, he had no rebounds, even though playing down in the post. He did have 3 fouls, had 2 turnovers, ended up with 6 points. It was a difficult situation. Tamar Bates had 26 for Missouri. Caleb Grill had 22. When that happens, you're going to have a tough time beating Missouri. That's just the truth and the way it is. I mean, you want hard truth. You want me to tell it like it is. That is like it is. And Ole Miss is in absolutely a free fall type position at the moment. And it's not, like I said, not a free fall position because they lost to Missouri. The problem is the loss to Texas A&M. If Ole Miss would have beat Texas A&M, the season would have been fine. It would have been normal. Even with next week being potentially as weird and difficult as it's going to be, with Kentucky waiting after the Auburn game, it still would have been a 5-2 team. Now you have a point that after this 3-game stretch is over to be a 500 basketball team in the SEC. This is now a race to 8. Pure and simple. Now, we're going to take your comments right after this break. We're going to hear what you have to say. Remember, whenever you comment, put the place where you're commenting from. And so if your name is not on there, put your name on there as well so I know who is sending the comments. I would appreciate that very much. But we'll get back to your comments right after this. All right, so here we go. The Locked On Ole Miss podcast, instant overreaction where we're either unbelievably elated or unbelievably deflated. And today is the latter. We are down. Ole Miss has lost 3 basketball games in a row. And after the Alabama game, roughly a week and a half ago, as that's the crazy thing, is such a quick turnaround that you're like, wow, it's like you were on top of the world and it just fell off a cliff. It's a bad situation as well. So let's get into your comments, really what's going on right now. Cim Millan says, is Ole Miss going to drop out of the top 25? Potentially, honestly. And especially if they do not go 1-1 this week. I mean, that Texas game has just become a must win. Well, I joked about this Missouri game, not necessarily joked about it, but said this game is a need to win. The Texas game is a must win game, with Auburn coming in on Saturday, Kentucky coming in the week after that. For Ole Miss to make the tournament and be what Ole Miss wants to be, they need to win probably 2 of those games. I mean, it seems like Kentucky and Texas would be the 2 most likely, but Ole Miss needs 2 out of 3 in those games. Tristan McMullen says, we suck. And at the moment, yeah, they kind of do. They're getting mauled on the boards. As high as they were after the Alabama game, they're in a valley right now. Mark Walsh says, same crap like last year. crap the bed late in the season. Yeah, they're getting mauled on the boards, and they're kind of figuring out what's going on. Jamie Meredith, Tristan, we're a high five, Steve Ballinardi, not anymore. People, Davis is out. If they were going to play Morell and our point guard was hurt, wasn't right. Use your brain. Missouri is not weak. Problem isn't Missouri, it's Texas A&M. Saints fan 04 says a loss to Texas, in my opinion, is over. Texas is a must-win game. You have to win that game. I don't think there is any realistic coming back if you lose to Texas, especially with Auburn and Kentucky, because this has a potential to snowball on Ole Miss and end up being a 6 or 7 game losing streak in a row. And that is a problem. The team can be very good, but they've got to get their mind right. They've got to start playing free. Playing like they were in those first 4 games. If they can do that, they can win 2 out of these 3 games. But Texas is a must win. You have to win that game. And if you don't, it's just going to be very, very problematic. What happened to Dre Davis? All I know is an injury. Let's see. We play passive on their stars, I think, because we're playing dinged up. But I agree with Steven. 2 or 3 is coming week, and we're still maybe a 5. Or if we lose to Texas, we're a bubble team. If Ole Miss loses to Texas, there's a chance that it gets sideways on Ole Miss basketball. There's a real chance that it gets sideways on Ole Miss basketball. With Auburn and Kentucky and the teams that are tough inside the SEC, there's a chance that you lose 6 or 7 in a row. And that's problematic. This is a race to 8. That's all you can do is hope for 8 games to win the game. Don't think about winning 10. It's now just about making the dance because of what this could be. Nobody get ahead of themselves. After the Alabama game, it's like, oh, this is a Final Four team. All of that. And then all of a sudden, this team just fell off a cliff. And it's crazy. James Ashmore, why is Sean still taking the ball out? You have to be able to get the ball in without a turnover. It's 2 straight games that has been weird. I mean, they need to go back to Brakefield taking out the ball. They need to go back out with somebody that they can trust on the line because there were way too many turnovers. And, that was bad. We've had one really good win at Alabama. That's about it. Now they beat BYU. They beat Louisville, who's probably a 7 seed right now. They've had many good wins. They've got 5 quad 1 wins right now. So that's bunk. Keith Davis, no need to panic, but Morell needs to step up. Is he hurt? I think he is hurt a little bit, but not just Matthew Morell. I mean, Padula has to play better than he is currently. He's pressing a little bit at the moment. He just is. I think Ole Miss they need Dre Davis. They need that person on the floor. He fills a role. Reed Hell says they've won at least 6 Power 4 games. Yeah, I'm not questioning Ole Miss's resume right now. I'm just trying to crystal ball this out. And if Ole Miss drops that game against Texas and you have number 1 Auburn coming in on Saturday, and then you have Kentucky, and we all know how Ole Miss does against Kentucky historically, you have a chance at about a 6-game losing streak. And it could snowball on Ole Miss. If Ole Miss wins 2 or 3 this week, they're fine. Everything's normal. I'll be back on here doing my normal elated stuff. But if Ole Miss loses to Texas and ended up with a 6-game losing streak, that's danger zone. That's what I'm talking about. Jared Parker says rebounding is killing us for inconsistent scoring. Nobody is good at getting to the rim or creating. D is good at getting to the rim when he wants to. I think Ole Miss had that a little bit at times in spurts, but the offense just disappears. The defense isn't supposed to. Missouri scoring 83 points is a bigger deal than we realize because of how good this defense can play. We'll see, but They have to rebound the ball better. They cannot get mauled on the boards each and every game, because if that happens, you are not shooting well enough. These players aren't playing well enough to win basketball games. That Texas A&M game was killer, man. Game was killer. Train time is the non-play tonight because he's injury. Morell is not 100%. It seems like we've been snake bit since Bama, the Bama win. If it's from Jay Cannon and Lumberton, yeah, ever since that Bama win. And that's so that game upsets me so much, because after that Bama win, everybody in the fan base was paying attention to Ole Miss basketball. Everybody. Ole Miss basketball was about to completely break free. If Ole Miss could have figured out a way to beat Mississippi State, to get that Texas A&M win, 2 really close wins that you had a chance to get, but dropping 3 games with the potential of dropping 4 to where a streak could happen, that is problematic for Ole Miss trying to get a fan base to be interested and buy into basketball. Listen, a little inside baseball. I'll tell you this right now. Nobody else will tell you this. I'll tell you this, though. I have to put football in every title, in every thumbnail, because when I do that, I get a ton of views. When I put a basketball number in there and a basketball title, I get about 40% of the views of a football video. I can talk about basketball. I can treat the video like basketball. Football is king on this campus at a level that I don't think people understand. Jared Parker says, suck to think of our 5 losses, 3 games were 1 possession games. I'd rather lose by 10 than 1 possession. No, because eventually that's going to even out. It is. It's going to even out. Jared Parker says the entire SEC is tough. Yeah, it can go sideways on you in a hurry because there's so many desperate teams. Remember, Ole Miss still has Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida on the schedule to go with Auburn twice. 5 games are against top 5 teams, essentially. It's a race to 8. A race to 8. You have to beat Oklahoma. You have to beat Texas. You have to win in South Carolina, who's difficult to beat in Columbia, and that's where Ole Miss is playing them. You have to win those. Man, that Texas A&M game was so massive for Ole Miss basketball. Steven is right. Just getting inside info, we're badly dinged up, and I'm hoping Padula doesn't get in concussion protocol. Star says, good vibes from Alabama, hotty toddy. Yes, good vibes are needed. Stars, Texas isn't an easy win. And remember, that is the most potential for getting weird game on Ole Miss's basketball schedule. Get ready to hear about Chris Beard for 4 days in Texas. All of that story, get ready for that to get brought up. It's going to dominate the news cycle in this game because this is the first time they've played. Star says bad passing just seems off. Yeah, it seems nonchalant on certain things. Very, very much not the norm. Keith Davis says we'll beat Texas. They're coached by Gus from Breaking Bad. Texas beat A&M. Came back from 22 points down today and beat Texas A&M at home. Texas beat Missouri in midweek at home. Texas is on a 2-game winning streak. They're going to come into Oxford feeling well. Dia reaches limit. I do not know exactly what Dia is going to do. Like I said, people are definitely focusing on him more now. Ole Miss needs a secondary player to step up and kind of be consistent and have the ability to be counted on. Cim Millan says, I think Ole Miss needs to score 100 points to beat Auburn. I don't know if Ole Miss can beat Auburn without an Alabama-style defensive thing where just shots aren't going down for Auburn. Auburn, if Auburn's playing well, that they're just a tough out for everybody on the schedule. It's just the way it is. Seems like the Bama curse all downhill. I think they read their headlines a little bit, and Mississippi State kind of popped them in the mouth right after that Alabama game. And maybe that game showed other teams how to play Ole Miss, and a lot of things worked out of it. But Ole Miss is going to have to figure out what's going on. Broom's ankle is okay. I chatted with him on TikTok. Stars. That's weird, man. That's weird. Alan Ingram, like last year, we start well and we fade away. No, this isn't the same thing as last year. This isn't the same thing as last year. The teams that Ole Miss have lost to are better than last year. Okay? This is not last year. The only thing similar to last year is this is a losing streak. But if you remember last year, Ole Miss didn't win in February and March, basically. The only team they beat was Missouri. And that was a different Missouri team than this season's Missouri team. This Missouri team is actually really, really good. They really are. And like I said, the problem isn't losing to Missouri. This was going to be a difficult game to begin with. The problem was Wednesday night against Texas A&M. That game is the problem in this whole situation. An overtime loss to Mississippi State on the road, that's not a problem. Losing to Missouri on the road, not a problem. Getting beaten the way they did against Texas A&M, that's the problem. That's what everybody should be angry about. That's what everybody should be worried about. That's what's going to potentially keep Ole Miss from getting to where they want to be. It's not losing on the road at Missouri. It's not losing on the road in overtime against Mississippi State. It's dropping a game against Texas A&M that you were up by 8 points with 2 minutes to go in the game. That's the problem. That's the one that everybody needs to circle, underline, and look back on, and all of this stuff. That is Kentucky in football. That is Tennessee Tech in baseball. That was inexplicable. And that game is the problem. Sorry, that one gets me fired up a little bit. Keith Davis, are Tennessee and Auburn playing baseball? It's 8-5 with 12 minutes to go, 16 seconds to go in the first half. Yeah, they play some defense. Tennessee does. Tristan McMullen really needed this one, and we flat out got outplayed in every aspect. We just sucked. It's a road game in the SEC. The problem was Wednesday. Like I said, anybody mad about this Missouri game does not understand what's going on and what's genuinely expected. Wednesday was the problem. He plays NCAA football game on there. He doesn't know I'm an Ole Miss fan. No foul. Okay. All good. Yeah. A&M beat them twice, potentially. But they didn't play poorly. Some players did. They didn't play well, though. Nobody played extremely well. There was nobody making shots. They were all just a little bit off. There was nobody that could make any type of a big shot. Every time they came back, Missouri was like, they had the hand on the forehead, just keeping them at bay. They were fine. They knew that if Ole Miss, the only way that Ole Miss had a chance is if they made it all the way back, and they never could. Every time Ole Miss got to 5 or 4 or 3, Missouri got it back out to 8 or 9, and then eventually broke into double figures, and the game was essentially over at that point. It was bad. It was bad. Jamie Meredith says, I think we have injuries that are hitting Beards like Kiffin, and he isn't telling us. At this point, Jamie, I don't care if he has injuries. All I care about is wins and losses. We're not in for participation trophies in this game. Ole Miss needed to beat Texas A&M. They should have beat Texas A&M. And we'll see exactly how that goes. Anyway, thanks to everybody for tuning into the program tonight. We will talk to you later. We have a couple of shows tomorrow, and also we will be back with the Locked On Ole Miss podcast on Monday. Anyway, take care, everyone. Hotty toddy.